Welcome back to Cityline. Being a professional woman of color in today's world can sometimes be daunting. Well, one psychologist has put together a long list of African-American women in contemporary history that she felt deserved acknowledgement for their unparalleled work and accomplishment over the years. Dr. Sonnee Weedn is author of a book called Many Blessings, a tapestry of accomplished African-American women, and she joins us on the program today. Hi, Sonnee, how are you?
Good morning, Karen. I'm glad to be here.
In the interest of full disclosure, I should let our audience know that I was honored to be among the list of women that you profiled in your book. Thank you so much.
You were, and you were only the third person I interviewed, and I was very anxious when I met you, but I was immediately at ease.
Well, you, of course, were very gracious. Tell us about this book and why you decided to write it.
Karen, I realize now, in retrospect, that the seeds for this book were planted when I was a little girl. We lived for a brief time twice in the segregated South. Then we left, and I was not raised there. I was raised in Southern California. But the seed began to germinate when a young, urban, African-American woman was referred to my psychology practice asking for psychotherapy. And I felt as though I wasn't perhaps the right person for her, that perhaps our experiences were too different in life for me to be effective. And she insisted. And so we had a long journey together, her treatment with me and really my learning from her. And so at the end of that period of time, I decided, along with her agreement, that we would write this book together and that she would be my first interviewee. And that's how it happened.
Now, tell us some of the women that are profiled in the book.
Well,
there are many.
There are many. There are 31 women profiled in the book. I tried to include a very wide cross-section of ages, of socioeconomic and educational background. And so it is, I think it is a broad cross-section from Sechiwa Shakur, who is the youngest, to Dr. Jocelyn Elders, who is the eldest woman in the book. Tell me again what else you wanted to know.
Well, what I'd like to know, and one of the first questions I asked you when we had a chance to sit down for my interview, is what thread connects the women in the book?
Yes, and at the time I told you I didn't know because you were only the third person I interviewed, but I do know now, Karen, and that is a thread of altruism. So every woman I interviewed in this book, young and old, wealthy and from the lower socioeconomic level, every single one of these women is giving so generously of her time to her community in volunteerism. Didn't seem to matter whether these women were working 60 hours or more a week at their profession, at their job, or not. They were out in the community doing great things.
And what were some of the challenges faced by the women that seem to run, again, be a continuum? Because it seems like all of the women profiled in the book had professional challenges, but because of stick-to-itiveness and strong self-esteem, overcame those challenges.
Well, not all, certainly, but many of the women I interviewed had grown up in law-enforced segregation. And so certainly that was a very big obstacle. And one of the things that occurred to me as I began to write this book is that there had been a confluence of the civil rights movement, the women's rights movement, that allowed many of these women, very talented women, who had always been there but had faced great obstacles to come on through. So I think racism was probably the biggest obstacle. Poor educational opportunities. Many of the women, well, quite a number came from projects, public housing projects where the educational opportunities were not great. And although they may have been admitted to very good high schools, for example, like Bronx Science High School would be one example, they were not really educationally prepared to be there. And they were shocked to find that out. They really believed that public education in the United States was equal. And so that was another obstacle, having to be tutored in order to be up to par with the other students who had had better educational opportunities. So I would say the racism and the deprivation of poverty was oftentimes the biggest obstacles.
Now, as a psychologist, what lessons can young women, young African-American women who pick up the book, what can they derive from it that will help them in turn become a success?
I'm hoping that young African American women and young women in general, Karen, will be inspired by the stories in the book. That's really one of the reasons that I wrote it, as a book of inspiration, that life has its challenges, no matter who we are, and that just because you face a challenge doesn't mean you can't overcome it, or you can't choose a different path. If something's blocked, then you can choose another path. One of the women in the book, I believe it was Joyce Elliott, said, go around the mountain if you can't go over it. Mm-hmm. And I think that's great advice.
Mm-hmm. And I think my word of advice was never listen to the word no.
Yes, mm-hmm. That's correct. If someone says no, well, go around the mountain if you can't go over the mountain.
I'm sure my studio's crew is laughing at me right now because I often have situations here that we want to accomplish, and let's figure out how we can do it.
Let's figure out how we can do it. Mm-hmm. I think another piece of this work, Karen, that's very important to me is the bridging. I think it's very important that there be more bridge work in all of our communities so that we're more comfortable with diversity, that we're enriched by it and challenged by it all at the same time.
Well, I had a chance to send the book to my parents. It's available on Amazon, and my mom immediately saw my picture on the cover of the book and was quite delighted. And Sonnee, thank you so much for the experience and for letting me be a part of your wonderful book.
You're welcome, Karen. Thank you for agreeing to be in it.
Okay, everybody, pick it up. The book is called Many Blessings, a tapestry of accomplished African American women by Dr. Sonnee Weedn. We'll be right back.